You are listening to the Firefighters BattleSpace podcast.
All right. So, again, thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you for your support. My name is Bill Brower. I'm a lieutenant with the Union Fire Department. I see one of my colleagues from Elizabeth that's joining us with us tonight, and I have the honor and privilege to be able to talk to Chief Vinny Dunn from the FDNY. This is such a great thing, Chief. You've got this book that you're coming out with, and it's really a pleasure to be able to speak to you here about your book, and to have everyone here kind of surrounding us, talking about your war years, your life story. This is like the Chief Dunn biography. A lot of us here in the fire service know you from the educational standpoint, putting out books that we've studied and read for promotional exams to become better firefighters, become better fire officers. So thank you for bestowing your knowledge and education on us, and for giving us the little bit of a glimpse into the life of Chief Vinny Dunn.
Before we start, I just want to tell you, you had a little Mohs surgery here. So you see these stitches here, sun damage. I was in the Navy, 60 years ago, and I love the sun. So the dermatologist, there's nothing serious. Just, some guy said, what's that on your side? So that's it. So anyway, good to see. I see Anthony there, all these other guys, Josh and Bruno, I see, and Brendan. I'm sure I know a guy named Brendan here somewhere. So I see a lot of people I know here. So how do you want to start?
So, listen, Chief, you are, I was going to give an introduction, but I think most of the people here know who you are, what you did in the FDNY, what you've done for us. You were in the United States Navy. You joined that in 1952. You joined FDNY in 1957. You were you were assigned to Engine 59, right, in Manhattan. And you were a lieutenant on Engine 33. You became the captain of Engine Company 58 in Harlem, which I can only imagine what that was like back in the day, in the 60s, late 60s and early 70s, with all the stuff going on in the city. Battalion chief in 1973, assigned to Battalion 25, promoted to deputy chief in 77 and assigned to Division 7, and then transferred to Division 3 in 1984, ultimately retired in 1999. We're very well aware of your involvement in the investigation of the unfortunate attacks on the World Trade Center and the collapse of the World Trade Center on 9/11.
You got it.
And I apologize. Somebody's giving me a phone call here, but the books that you've written, the countless books that everyone's read, and here we are now talking about your book, My War Years, a Fire Chief's Memoir, giving us a glimpse into Chief Vinny Dunn, and we appreciate it. So you're considered to be one of the godfathers of the fire service. In my opinion, I put you on Mount Rushmore of the fire service.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that word, the godfather. Well, then I said, well, who are godfathers? And I, right away, Alan Brunacini, I think he's a godfather. Frank Brannigan, he's a godfather. Then I said, who's out in the West Coast? Who is a big godfather in the West Coast? And today, I looked up Google this guy James O. Page, and he was a chief on the West Coast there, and he started GEMS, Journal of Emergency Medical Service, and he saw what was coming down. He was ahead of the game. So I would have to say he's a godfather. So, and they're godfathers of my generation. They're upcoming godfathers. But in my generation was Bruno, this guy James Page, Frank Brannigan. And so we're the godfathers. We're lucky enough to live this long and be called a godfather. And there are many, John Salk, John Norman, all these guys are coming up. They're future. They're not godfathers yet. They're they're gonna be godfathers.
Right.
But right now, it's me and Bruno and Brannigan and James Page.
So I mean, listen, Chief, you're 86 years young. I'm not hitting on you or anything, but you look pretty damn good for 86, and you're pretty sharp as a tack. I think everyone in this room would agree that you're with it. I mean, we've all been on. We know people that are up there in your area, right? That aren't with it. So God bless you.
God's been good to me. I understand. All of my friends are in walkers. I mean, all my friends in wheelchairs and walkers. I can't believe it. These guys were bike riders. These guys were, ESU cops. And so, I mean, the only thing I did, I ran for about 40 years till the knees went out, and now I walk. And my wife saved my life. She kept me from doing all the things I wanted to do. So, but I got no secret, I'm just, it's good. It's luck. And my father's genes, they were pretty good. But no, I understand how lucky I am. And I don't take it for granted. Every morning I wake up pain-free and I say, I don't know what it is. I don't know why. Maybe I'm pain-free and living so long to do this. That's about how I justify it.
So that kind of leads me, Chief, to ask you at this junction of your life, what inspired you to write this book? I mean, it's got to be one thing to write an educational book about the collapse of burning buildings or about safety and survival on the fire ground and giving young firefighters and fire officers some educational knowledge, right? Some words of wisdom and some things to live by and operate by and really setting some of the standards and SOPs and SOGs in the fire service. What inspired you to write a memoir? So give us a little bit of insight on that.
I'd have to say it really was my daughter. I mean, I have a wonderful, beautiful daughter. And she kept saying, Dad, you got to leave something. You got to tell us what you did those nights you weren't home. My daughter's, so she kept saying, Dad, you got to leave something. Tell us what you did in the fires. So she kept hopping on me. But let's go back. The real person, the first person, I always like to say this, that suggested I write a book about myself was my beautiful wife. She's deceased 3 years, beautiful woman. But anyway, 50 years ago, we have a little argument, about some silly thing I can't even think of. In the argument, after the argument, calms down. And then she said to me, you should write a book about something you really love. So I said, well, what would that be? She said, yourself, sarcastically, so that was the first person who ever suggested I should write a book about myself. So my beautiful wife 50 years ago. But recently my daughter kept saying, Dad, you got to do something. And, I'll tell you another thing. In the introduction, I said, I wanted to find out what makes Vinny run. I really don't understand, why I do this. I really don't. I mean, I think I do a lot of introspection, but I don't understand why I do this stuff, So that's all. So I did say, I want to know what makes Vinny run. That was one of the things. And I did find out some things, when I wrote it this was not something I sat down and said, let me think. These were stories and events that I went over and over in my mind, thinking about this fire, thinking about this event in the firehouse, thinking about this guy. So this was easy. I said, yeah, I'm going to start writing all these stories, and I did, when I did the lectures, I used to bring these stories into the lectures. That's another thing, and so I had a lot of that stuff, established in my mind. So that's how that book came about, and then of course, when I started out, now I had Janet Kimley was the fire department editor. I worked with her for 20 years. Janet was a volunteer firefighter, worked for WNY for 20 years. So I said, Janet, do you think you could edit a memoir? I mean, I know she could edit those technical books like a whiz, but I said, I'm going to start to tell you about myself. So she said, yeah, fine. And when you write something like this, you need an editor that knows how to present your words nicely. And I love editors that all my life, I let them roll and they really make my words sing. So, but you also I need an editor who understands the fire service. You know, you can't say the wrong thing if you start to talk about firefighting. So Janet wasn't, she knew firefighting, WNYF. So there was never in 20 years, an incorrect term about firefighting. So you can't just get any editor. So anyway, so Janet said, yeah, Vin, come on, let's go for it. So that's all I had to hear. We start on a memoir. So then she's down in Tennessee, and she's, but I got this pain in the back. I want to go into the hospital, get an epidural, and then we're going to start on your book. So, all right, great. So she goes into the hospital on a Thursday, and I get a call on a Sunday. Mr. Dunn, do you know a woman named Janet Kimley? I said, yeah. She said, she died. I said, what, from what? She said, COVID. I said, wait a minute. She went to the hospital for pain in the back. The woman said, COVID. So that was a stunner. So now, I said, oh, this isn't going to happen. I can't get any editor to come in and write about this firefighting and my personal things. So I have a distant relative, that I met once in my life. They come from, their family comes from Albany. So on my grandmother's side, I never met these people. So this woman, Ann Neville, who's up in the screen there, she helped me do a Facebook page, So anyway, I tell Ann, I said, I had this editor for 20 years, and Janet Kimley, and she just died, and I was in the middle of a memoir. So I said, I don't think I'm going to do it. So she said, wait. I said, she said, I can do that. I said, no, I don't think you really can. She says, yeah. She says, I worked for the Buffalo News for 20 years, and I'm a volunteer firefighter for 17 years in the Snyder Buffalo Fire Department. I said, I never knew that. So I'm back on the road again. So Ann starts me off. So now I start writing that book. And, the stories, like I say, they flowed easily. It was the easiest book I ever wrote. And I did it in about a year. And I'm sure there's a lot of guys who have better stories that could, just write. And there's something that I just found on a computer a year ago, which I just think is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It's called Read Aloud. And when you write a paragraph, you go to review, and then all of a sudden, drop down box has a big A, and you click on that. You put your cursor in the beginning of the paragraph, and you click on the A, and it starts to read you the words that you just wrote. Well, I'm stunned. You cannot make a mistake after you hear your words. So it's an editing. It's a real good editing, not just edit. Because, when you click that edit button, you don't know what's going on. But when you listen to your word, so that helped me write the book. And so Ann got me back on the track. And then, of course, whenever my wife was an artist, and we discussed this. When I would write an article, every article you write, you get right in the middle of it. You say, this is junk. She said, this is stupid. This is awful. Any creative person does any project, or any project. It could be you're building something in the garage, you're doing carpentry. And I'm sure you get in the middle of it and you say, this is awful. And it's mid-project crisis, I call it, because I've had it so often. So I get this mid-project crisis on this book. So my wife had passed away, a beautiful woman, but she had a group of women that she'd go out to dinner with. So one of the women I got to know, and we go out to dinner. So her name is Betty Lyons. She's the headmistress of Buckley Country Day School. It's an exclusive school in Roslyn. So we're going out to dinner one night, and I say, I think this thing is falling apart on me. I don't think I can do this. So she leans over the table and whispers in my ear, snap out of it, she says. Snap out of it. Like Cher did to Nicolas Cage in Moonstruck. She didn't smack me, but she said, snap out of it. And then she became my booster and my cheerleader and pushed me over the finish line. So these are all the people you need to write a memoir like that, you know. So that's how that book got together. All those people helped me get that thing finished. And you know, you don't do anything by yourself. And we all know this in the firehouse.
I mean, it takes a team to put things like this together, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you know, it really comes down to who you're surrounding yourself with. And, you know, you've done a great job of that throughout your entire career. What leading into that? So who in your fire service career has had the most influence on you, and when did you become interested in the educational side, or writing articles and writing these newsletters that have educated our firefighters for decades? When did you get started with that, and who had the biggest influence on you?
Well, you know, I have to say my father. I have to start with him. I mean, I was in the Navy. He suggested I take the test for fire department. He was a clerk. He worked in a controller's office in New York City. And God bless him, he thought enough of me to think I could pass the firefighter's test. I quit school. I never got good marks in school. And, you know, I thank him for thinking, well, maybe my son could pass this. Fireman's test was always the toughest test. So he sends in the application for me, signs it, and then he sends me these ARCO books in the U.S. Navy. I'm down in Guantanamo, and I start to read these ARCO books and do the questions, and you fail them and erase all the answers and do them over again. And that got me into that test. So that was the greatest leg up in my life, getting on the fire service. So, and that was one of the things that I learned writing this memoir. I didn't know my father that much. I didn't know what he did for me. I knew my father near the end of his life after my mother died. I got to know my father, but I really didn't know what he did for me. When I started to write this memoir, and I think about the time I got in trouble stealing something, you know, from the candy truck. You know, he made me apologize and paid whatever the value of it I stole. And, you know, and then he started giving me an allowance, you know. And then when I was in the Navy, I missed the bus going back to the base, drinking, partying. He drove me one night. He gets me in the car, drives me back to Maryland. It's a 3-hour ride. You know, I got back to the base just before 12 noon. He saved me from the brig, you know, and there were, you know, and then of course there were so many other things. I had a fire in my house that he came and saved my mother and I, you know. So I didn't know what my father did for me. That was it. Okay, well, let's go to influences. So I came in the fire service, and the first guy I have to say is this guy, Frank Muschio. I mean, it was, you know, I call him the Iceman's son. His father was an iceman. His father delivered these big chunks of ice, you know, and this guy was a very ambitious, you know, fireman. He came in about 2 months after me in the firehouse. I figured, well, I'm going to have a probie now. I'm not the junior guy. I can, you know, boss this guy around. No, he came in, took over me. You know, he said, Vin, come on, let's go up to the host tower. Let's start studying. Let's bring some weights up there, work out. You know, then he said, you're a veteran. Let's go to college. He said, I'm going to college. I get paid to go to college, but a GI Bill. You know, I didn't know all that stuff. So he set me on fire, you know, and then he said, let's study for lieutenant. So he was my, you know, again, I did not realize the effect that guy had on me till about 30 years later, when I started thinking, you know, when you get to your 40s, you start to think about your life. But that guy, you know, a lot of guys were turned off by his ambition. He became the vice president of the Uniform Fire Officers Association. He got his college degree. He started to get into real estate. He made $1 million buying and selling real estate in Astoria. He's got a $5 million house in my neighborhood on the water. And his wife had a business of flying, travel business. They flew half of the command structure of FDNY all over the world. The guy was like, Bill, he was like you, a very ambitious guy, you know. And so he, influenced me. He was the first guy. Then he got me to go to the school, and there was a very unusual. There was an early college course in Queens College called Fire Administration, and it was in 1959. I went there with him. I think I got an associate's degree in '62. So in that school, I mean, I was taught by. I'm a probie up in Harlem in 59 Engine, and I'm going to this school, and I'm hearing this guy, Charlie Walsh from the 3rd Division Commander, talking about strategy. I'm a kid. And I'm hearing the Chief of Fire Prevention talking about pre-planning. But there was this one guy, a captain. He was a captain at the time, 25 truck. He was a fireman in 30 truck, with my associate with 59. And so I this guy was more like one of us. I could associate, I could relate to him because I know where he came from. He came from my environment. This guy was Lou Harris was his name. That guy was a stunning, teacher. I mean, he was not a good looking guy. He was a big, rough, tough guy, had a little bit of a speech impediment. But I would sit on the edge of my seat listening to this guy. It was the passion that he had I think it was the way he talked about the fire service. So that guy, he made us write a workbook, which I studied for 20 years. And he was major influence. That guy, when I would see him, rarely I would be over in the library or something, studying as a kid. This guy came in the room. I had to get out of there. I just couldn't be in. This guy was so influential in my life. I didn't want to talk to the guy. I never told him what I felt about him. I told his son one day on the phone. But so that guy was stunningly all throughout my life. He became the chief of operations. And I dedicated that building construction book for him. It was Lewis Harris, chief of operations. He was a Navy CB during World War II. When he came out, he went to NYU on a GI Bill. He was a javelin. And then you got a picture of him in WNY throwing the javelin. He was really a rough guy. So, but super smart. And, but not outwardly so. But when you heard him speak and you realize, he'd be talking about one subject and then go off on a transit on another subject and give you 10 items about this side subject. So he was the guy that I used to try to figure out when he was teaching at Fire Tech or Delahanty to see if I could get him. He was definitely an inspiration. So that was one guy. Then, of course, I get this assignment. Another big influence in my life is I'm a battalion chief, big rising star in the fire service, on the deputies list. They asked me to come down to planning, to work down there. And I get an assignment to work with this Brooklyn Polytech professor, DeChico, Professor DeChico from Brooklyn Polytech. And we do these fire tests, 24 full-scale fires in these 4-row vacant row houses because we're losing them in Bushwick.
This is way before UL, right? This is before UL started any of that kind of testing.
Oh yeah, it was one of the very first.
Yeah,
no, I'll tell you what it was. Bill, it was the second test. The first test was high rise, 30 church, and the captain of Rescue 1 was the coordinator. He helped Polytech light the fires and didn't burn the building down. So my job was to let the Professor DeChico light the fires and not burn the building down until we wanted to near the end. So high-rise tests were first, at least I in my career. So I had the second one. I had row dwellings. Why does fire go into these cockles? So it was a beautiful test, a beautiful 24 tests we did. But of course I can't do the analysis, can't do the conclusion of these beautiful tests. So now, they want me in, right? The chief gives me a writer from WNYF. And I'm saying, who am I to write this for WNYF? I just didn't have the, whatever it was. So I leave headquarters with my tail between my legs, a big, my eyes fan. Not too many people knew about this project, but so I thought I was a failure. So So my second influence, it's a long way around to get to this guy. He's a professor in Queens College, so now I've got a midlife crisis. I can't write the book. I can't write the report. I'm no longer a rising star in my eyes, and I got my tail between the legs. I get assigned back up in Harlem, 25th Battalion. And so I have, believe it or not, more money on the GI Bill left. So I go back to Queens College. I got a bachelor's. I'm going for a master's in urban studies. The city is burning down. I figured, look, maybe let's find out what's going on there. So I go into this master's degree, chairman. He's the chairman of the urban studies department. Matthew Adel was his name. Little guy with a beard, and I looked him up today. He graduated from Harvard for his bachelor's degree. He got a master's degree in Columbia. He got a doctorate in Yale. He taught at MIT for 5 years. And this little guy, this little Jewish fella, is talking to me. And I'm saying, Professor, I said, I got 2 kids. I'm going back to school, but I'm not, it's tough with these kids in the class. He says, don't worry about it, Vince. He says, we'll write it. We'll do a tutorial. You bring a paper in here every month, about some issue. I did for high rise. I did buildings under construction. I did rubbish fires. Believe it or not, I did one on race in the fire service too. These became my thesis. But anyway, so I go into Professor Adel every month, and I got to write now the paper to this guy. I get away without going to classes. So now I said, now what? Professor Adel doesn't know anything about the fire service. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but when I start to write, I said, well, I can't say vent the roof. I got to say, well, how you do it in the tenement. You go to the adjoining building, go up to the top floor, cross over the parapet wall, and then with tools, you break the skylight and lift up the scuttle cover, force open the door. I got to write everything out for Professor Adel. He don't know anything. And that was the key to my writing. I couldn't use jargon. I had to say everything. And then, later on, and I'm in the Bronx and I'm writing for WNY, by the way. And this captain comes up, he says, hey, Vin, he's a cap, he says, whatever, I was the chief then, I was the deputy. So he said, hey, deputy, he says, the stuff you write is very basic. He says, and I said, wait, you're up here, it was captain of 38 truck. I said, you're up here 20 years. I'm not writing for you. You know everything. I'm writing for the new probe that's assigned to your firehouse to see these H-type buildings. So I didn't want to get the guy angry, but he said, well, everything you write is very basic. That was the key. Yeah. I was writing to Professor Matthew Adel, and that opened me up. And now here I am, 9 books, 9 books later, So that's how, these were the 2 influential guys on me. So when Professor Adel died, I just found out he came from Sunnyside where I grew up, and he died at 49. God, the guy with all those degrees. So he was a big influence on my life. And Lou Harris, he passed away, but his son is on the job. I think he was, but another major influence. And I never told either one of them. I think I told him once I met him at a Chiefs meeting. I said, and he was old and frail. I said, Chief, I want to tell you, you were a big part of my life. But I never told those guys. So my point here is there are people looking at you, everybody up on that screen, you too, Bill, who you are role models to, and you don't know it. That's what I'm saying. So you don't know, but there are young firemen looking at you saying, I want to be like that guy, So that's it. So that's 4 we have to be on our, and I always felt like I told my wife one day, when I go into the firehouse, I feel like I'm going on stage. I feel everybody is looking at me. I never let my, maybe once or twice, I never let my hair down in the fire, like I'm doing here today. Yeah. I was a captain, I was lieutenant, Jesus. I had to come in and present, this role model, it wasn't fun, but in my case, a lot of guys did, do it. And you got to be, I remember reading that book on leadership. It was a bulletin. I said, look, you got to be the way you are. If you're a lay it out guy, you got to be that. You can't suppress that. So, but I was a guy. I said, look, I'm on the job. I got to, hold it in there and be who I got to try to be. I've been pretending all my life, frankly. I've been pretending all my life. I know who I am, and I try to be this person, but that's a facade. And I like facades. As I got older, I said, you know what? Having a facade is not bad. That's what we do. And I know, I don't know Lou Harris. I wonder what he was like. And God knows what Matthew Adel was like. Although even today, when I'm Googling him, they said he founded the Urban Studies Department at Queens College. And he was a Marxist professor. I never knew that. I just knew him as an urban studies expert. He wrote a book. So they were my two big influences.
You know what, Chief? You and I've told you this before. You're a very humble man. I mean, everyone in this room right now is here because of you, and you sitting there, telling all of us that we've got people looking up to us. We're the ones looking up to you.
Well,
and
okay. Well, I looked up to Lou Harrison. But that's all, and that's how this job is so good. That's why the fire service is so good. We all look up to the person we want to be like, and there's so many variations, presented to us in the firehouse. So that's why, and we become better people by looking at and trying to become like our role models. So we're all good.
No, I was going to say, I think it carry, it's, I'm a second generation firefighter, right? So as kids, I mean, I know I was this way. I'm sure the majority of the people in this room may or may not have been. So I can't speak for everybody, but we got kids looking up to us, right? They want to be firefighters when they grow up. When you're in kindergarten, you want to be a firefighter. First grade, that's how it worked for me. And I'm blessed and grateful. And now, we're looking at you saying, I want to be like Chief Dunn. It never ends in your career. You're always wanting to be better. You're always wanting to be more than what you are. And to hear you, in return, be as humble as you are about it, number one. And number two, kind of keep us in the mind frame of, hey, you guys in this room right now and gals, there's people looking up to you right now saying that they want to be like you. Like, it's a very interesting perspective. That's very interesting.
And, at this stage of the game, I used to go to school. I used to sit in classes, and look at the professor and daydream, wonder what is this all about? He'd have his subject matter. And then I realized, and I used to read about education, and it said it's really the inspiration that education that's important in education. It's not the technical data, because I was always involved in the technical data, but it's the people and the subject that inspires us. And the fire service inspired me. So, and I look at my life, it was the inspiration. Now, I didn't know it at the time. I always loved technical data, but they say it's in education, it's how to, in the long range. And now I see that's true. I mean, I can see how my life transpired over the years, the decades, because of people that I met. And I never knew that. I mean, I was always talking about numbers and things. So that's all. So long-winded. God.
No, I think.
I have a big ego. Let me tell you something. You keep saying I'm humble. I got a big ego. You don't do stuff like this. What a giant ego.
Your head doesn't show it. I don't see your head growing at every every second here. So you're good. I wanted to ask you what this book personally meant to you, but I think that's I think you've kind of touched upon that a little bit. How this is a memoir, right? So you're writing about your life experiences from when you were a kid. I know, and this I grabbed from one of the other podcasts you were on about your first fire as a kid, right? You were 13 years old. You talked about the story about your mother being involved in a mattress fire in the house, and you used the pea soup. I thought that was an unbelievable story. But how challenging was this book for you, writing some kind of personal memoir, telling your life story from start to finish versus an educational kind of like, black and white, these are the facts, this is, how we put out a fire, this is how we ventilate a roof. How challenging was this for you to dig deep down inside and come up with a way to verbalize these stories and put them into words so that people can read them?
Well, I do know the craft of writing. I mean, I've been doing it for 30 years. I'm not good. I thank Ann and I thank Janet Kimberly. And I got a list of other editors who have made my words sing. But I do know the craft of writing. After when, of course, I got read aloud. I listen to the words and you can't, if they don't sound good. So I know the craft. But these were stories. These were things, when I do a lot of daydreaming. Now they're saying that's creative thinking, by the way, laying in bed, listening to the radio, that's creative thinking. But these were stories that, that fire, I could never forget that fire. But then one of the things you find out with writing is, I remember my father, he couldn't get water. I remember the sparks and the flame when he whipped the blanket off the spread off my mother. And I remember running out in the kitchen, grabbing that big pot of remnants pea soup my mother was cooking, but I had filled it up with water. And I picked it up and he put that fire out on the mattress. Had my mother removed. And then he drags the mattress, in a box spring out the hallway, which could have been a disaster, killing the people up there. Brings it out in the hallway, out in the street, hooks it on his 37 Chevy bumper, drives it flaming down the street into a lot, throws it into a lot, and then comes back, we're cleaning up the place. My mother's burned, but she didn't want to go to the hospital. Not bad, but it was bad. But so he said to me, "What the hell did you bring in the pea soup for?" We're cleaning the place is full of slipping on the pea soup remnants. So I said, "Dad, it was all filled up. Well, what am I going to do?" And then I said, and see, when let me tell you something about writing. When you write something, it's so much more powerful than you've got all these memories in your mind and you go over them and over them years and decades. But when you start to write it down, I love to say, these guys come in, "Oh, well, what you doing? Oh, you 2 pin jobs, wait a minute. Tell me about a pin job. You're talking about a car accident on a highway where the trucks are whizzing by 60 miles an hour, where the people are trapped and you got to cut them out of the car, where you got to do a neck brace, where leaking gasoline can explode at any time, where you got to get them out and transportation of the engine so you don't do more damage. A pin job, that's all they get. It's, when you start to write out what a pin job is, getting trucks whizzing by, leaking gasoline, people screaming in the car, cutting people out while cars are going by, making sure you don't do more damage. That's what we do. When you start the right thing, then even the little fires out, they become, much more powerful. So that's the power. I found that out, when I first started. I said, Jesus, this sounds much more scary than I thought it was when I write it. So, so when I say to, and based on that, I said it in the article, when I talk to young farmers, I said, "Kid, think about what you do. We don't think about what we do. Think about what you do, what you did at that operation, that little, think about every single thing you do. And then you'll see what you do." We don't think about what we do. Years ago, you go to the fire. And of course, sometimes you can't keep thinking about it. It's so tragic. You want to get it out of your mind. But when you start to face it and think about what you do, even those little jobs become life-saving events. And so that's what I would say. Writing that book and they were little stories, but they became more profound when I wrote them out. And I didn't, one, like I don't want to go over there, but one that I wrote, and a lot of people like it. I think Ann liked it. And I didn't really think, I said, well, let me put it in there. It was a fire I could never forget, and it was not a big fire. I'm a 2-year guy, 2 years on a job, where second due on about 100, and, was in St. Nicholas Avenue, 154th, 149th, 2 tenements. I know one tenement's going, and there's an alleyway, 5-foot alleyway, another corner tenement. And I'm senior man that night. I got the nozzle. We're second due, 69 is first due. We report to the command post, heavy fire coming out of there. 69 is now, getting water. So, oh, geez, we're going to get a piece of this. We'll get the second line up there. So I'm ready for my big moment. Even second due, I wanted, because it was a very serious fire. And it was like a 5-foot alleyway to another tenement, similar 6-story. So the chief says to my officer, 59 needs you get a line and exposure 2. I said, oh, Jesus. So we go around to St. Nicholas Avenue, and I got a 2.5-inch line on over my shoulder. And I start up this stairway, a nice, clean tenement. I'm saying this is a waste of time. I'm a 2-year veteran looking for fire duty. And I'm stomping up the stairway to feed me the hose. I'm the nozzle man. And so we get about the 3rd floor, and I hear, fuego, fuego, fuego. Fuego, fuego. What the hell is this? So we go up to the 5th floor, and there's this beautiful little Spanish girl with a little baby in her arms, fuego. And her apartment door is open, and there's a Christmas tree in there, and beautiful lights, and she had colored lights, Dick Christmas, fuego, So we go in there, and there's no smoke. So we go into the bedroom window, and you can see the window frames burning. I got a 2.5-inch hose. So okay. So we start watering this big 2.5-inch line, and it's burning on the clean windows, So clean apartment, and so now I'll get water. I keep the tip on the 2.5-inch in the nozzle, and so now we roll the windows down and raise them up a little bit so I can shoot some squeaky water, out the side. We put the fire out that had spread from this 5-foot alleyway to this apartment, So we knocked the little fire around the thing, and there's Christmas music playing in the background, So we put the fire out. Now we don't even want to rip open the windowsill, so we're feeling it with our hand. We're scraping the char off, and we come to the, I just wet it down a little bit more. Be very careful with the water, and Christmas music's playing, and then so they knocked the fire down across you can see down in the tenement next door. And then we're all set here. The officer says, okay, come on, done, take a, they shut the water down, they drain it. So we mop up what we can, and we're leaving. Oh, muchas gracias, little girls, muchas gracias. So, I don't know. I just thought of that fire all my life. I had 2 years in the job, and then I said, let me write about it, see how it turned. When I wrote about it, it turned out pretty nice, and a lot of people liked it. My daughter liked it, and guys liked it, and it was true. Then I realized, so what's the significance of that fire? Firefighting is more than putting fire out. I understood about protecting property there. I understood about protecting exposures. That was a small fire, but had profound, resulted. I'll tell you another fire about small fires. We get this fire on the West Side Highway, 6-story tenement, and there's a wind blowing in from the Hudson River. So the top floor is burning, roaring wind. You talk about, we didn't even know wind-driven fire. It was a hurricane wind. So we stretch a line up the fire escape. I'm on the top floor. Again, we got the nozzle on this fire escape, and there's maybe a 10 or 15-foot alleyway between this tenement on the Hudson River and the other big old pre-war tenement. So the squad never got off the hallway. They could not. No interior hose line got in any apartment. It just burned the whole top floor and the roof off. The next day we went there, it was just ash. You looked up, there was sunlight and ash. We never got in there. So I'm on the fire escape with the nozzle, and we're just throwing it in this flaming window that was just wind driven from the Hudson River. So I hear somebody shouting down in the alleyway, hey, 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 59, 59. I look down, the chief is going crazy down there. So again, I got about 2 years in the job. So I'm with the captain, Bob Clark, and the chief is pointing, look at the window on the adjoining building. The adjoining building window is burning. The window frame is burning. This whole top floor is roaring. So, so the captain says, put the line on that window. So I said, Cap, what the hell are we, that little fire there? We got this big raging. He said, put that, line over there. I'll throw you up the fire escape. So I get the line and we wet this window frame down, and the chief is screaming so I said, I just don't understand. As we go back to quarters, I said, that was only a little fire. I tell the captain, what was he getting so excited about? He says, if we didn't put that little window out, that little fire would have been another windblown tenement fire over there. So, some young firefighter, including myself, don't understand size doesn't matter when it comes to fire. Those little fires that little window fire was more important than this major top floor roaring blaze I had. So that was all. And I think I wrote about that, but so anyway, so what was your question?
No, listen, Chief, I mean, I could sit here for hours and listen to you talk about these war stories, and I'll forget about what question that I asked you and just get caught up in it. But
these guys in.
No, yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you one other thing real quick before we get into the Q&A session. So
you're the boss. I am.
No, you're the boss.
I could not have put this on, by the way, and might have, but not me. God.
What are we drinking tonight, Chief? I want to know what's in the glass. What are we drinking tonight?
No, I don't do. This is very serious, man. I don't mess around when I'm doing me. I got lemons in there, but this is my drink of choice. I got wine in there. I got some very nice wine, by the way. I'm a big wine drinker, but not when I'm doing this. I've learned that, the hard way.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. So, when you're talking about this stuff, you're verbalizing some of the stuff. It brings me back to when I'm studying for the promotion. You're talking about, how do we verbalize ventilation, and you go through this whole entire thing. It kind of brings me back to studying for the promotional test and all the different things that you have to, verbalize, and you put it in a very, eloquent way. And the stories, I think the stories are really what makes this book, and you've gone into a couple of them a little bit for us. My biggest question to you was, you mentioned a couple of them. What was your favorite story to tell in this book? Like, what's the one that stands out the most for you? And can you give us a little bit of insight as to what that story was without spoiling the book for us?
Yeah, I think the big story was, I would have to say, I don't know if it's my favorite. I love a lot of the stories, but the one story was how the aggressive interior attack. I know nobody likes to hear this, but an aggressive interior attack saved my life one night. So, and I'm always for, I understand the value of aggressive, but I'm always been trying to talk about safety. But one night, the aggressive interior attack and an aggressive firefighter saved my life. So we have this fire out of 115th Street, 3:00 in the morning. We get to the top floor, and this guy, Joe Valenti, is my nozzle man, tough guy. And this is a very strange fire. The hallway, public hallway, is flaming. The walls are burning. The doors are burning. Not coming out of a door, that we're going into the apartment. But the whole top floor, this is the top floor of a 6-story tenement, is in flames. So we're on the stairway waiting for water, inch and 3/4. And so we're down 3 steps. This is the top floor, just fire. I never saw anything like this. So we get water. So now Joe Valenti is a very aggressive guy. So Joe gets on, he starts stomp up the stairs, whipping and Lazar. I'm saying to myself, I'm tired. We had a lot of runs. I said, we could hit this fire from the stairway, but Joe is an aggressive. So he stomps up the stairway. I stomp up the stairway behind him. He makes the turn on the public hallway, knocks down the fire. We get to the back of the hallway where the landing section goes up to the roof bulkhead. And I remember in the smoke and fire, there's a hole in the floor right by where the first step is going up to the bulkhead. And he's got the nozzle flowing and he sticks it into this hole in the floor. And all of a sudden, wham, crash. That stair landing from the top floor to the bulkhead comes crashing down on the stair that we were just standing on, waiting for water, And I said, Joe, let's hit it from the stairway. We would have been dead. So now I said, geez, it's got to be somebody under there, Joe. So we when everything calmed down, we see what happened, the smoke and dust. So we tilt up the stair landing, Joe and I, and out of the soffit comes hot ashes, like red hot pieces of wood. The carriage beams had burned into little pieces of red hot wood. Holy Christ. Nobody was under there. We dropped the stairway. And had we been crushed under there, a 2-ton stairway, we would have been slowly burned, with that hot ash there. So that was, so we go back to quarters. And Joe he was like an ornery guy, Headquarters would have said we didn't have helmets on, but I said, and I thought about that fire many, many years, but until I wrote it, it wasn't as impactful as when I wrote it in, and I actually had written that story about that fire in several other articles over the years, but I included it in there. But so that would have to be my favorite. The guys like to hear that any aggressive attack can save your life sometimes. And so that was I would say right at the moment my favorite story.
So what's next in line in the life and the career of Chief Dunn? What do you see yourself moving on to next after such an accomplished career, writing so many different publications and educational books, and now this memoir giving us a glimpse into the life of Chief Vinny Dunn? What do you see yourself doing next?
Well, like I said on that the podcast, Getting Salty, I used to say I'm in a 2-minute warning period of my life. Now I'm in the sudden death period of my life. I wake up every day and say, Vin, this could be the last day. You could drop dead getting out of bed. So I don't know if I got a future, but I do have. I've always planned. I've always had plans, and all my life I've planned. And guys have said to me, well, Vin, what happens if you die? What happens to your plans? Well, you still got a plan. I couldn't, I knew I could die, but planning was very important. And I said, even if you only achieve, and all my life, I never achieved 100% of my plans. So if I achieved 90% or 80%, I said, well, if I didn't plan, I would not have done that 80%. So I have a plan. So my plan and my future is with Ann Neville here, is that she has a book of mine being edited called Skyscraper Firefighter. I did 15 years in the 3rd Division, and that is such a different place. And I spent, training and fighting these horrendous office building fires, not project fires. They're much different. Yeah. But I had to write something about the 3rd Division high-rise office building fire. So I know it's not going to be a bestseller, but Ann got it, and she's editing it. And that's going to be my next book. It's Skyscraper Firefighting. That's already finished. Got the pictures, and going to turn that over to Joe Carney, and we're going to go right to Amazon. We're going to do soft cover, because I know it's not a big seller. We're going to do soft cover and Kindle.
And Vincent Dunn, and VincentDunn.com, right?
And Oh yeah, it's gonna go. Yeah, thanks to you.
Right.
Bill, you got to go to vincentdunn.com. Bill has really made that site so unbelievable. Anthony's laughing, but he made that site really nice. Everything I did is on that site. So thanks to Bill. But and then believe it or not, I'm working on another book, my 10th book. And that's scary number 10. But I'm working on a book called Life and Death Decisions, which I think is pretty good. It's life and death decision in firefighting. I think that's the title, but it's about life and death decisions. We don't speak of what we do in terms of life and death decisions, but I'm realizing as I'm writing this book, yes, this is a life and death decision. You know, you force open a door or you make a life and death decision. Do I go in, you know, or do I close the door and wait for the hose line? That's a big life and death decision. You know, so do I vent now or wait for the hose line? That's a life and death decision. This is a very exciting book that I'm writing. You know, so it's got me. So that's it. That's book number 10. So after my memoir, out comes Skyscraper Firefighting with Ann. That's for Anthony. Now he's down in the 3rd division. You know, so he'll appreciate this book. He's going to get another autographed copy of a book from me, commander of the 9th Battalion. Right, Anthony? Yeah, we'll talk later. But so I had to write that. That is such a rare fire, you know, but, you know, I got that off my chest, but it's a major event. And then my life and death decision making, which really what I'm doing with life and death decision making. I wrote that book, which everybody loves, and I love it. It's called Safety and Survival on the Fireground. Well, I'm rewriting those tactics, you know, like venting, searching for fire, going above a fire, cellar fires. I'm rewriting all those tactics. And I'm identifying when the life and death decision is being made. So that's all. I think it's going to raise the consciousness of the new firefighter. Hey, I never thought that was a life and death decision. You know, it is. You know, putting those markers out on the highway. That's a life and death decision. You don't do that, and that truck rams into you. You know, so these are, you know, that's it. That's my 10th book, Life and Death Decision in Firefighting.
Well, you know, Chief, you and I, we're going to work together. We're going to make some of this stuff more readily available on the digital side. I think a lot of these younger guys gravitate more towards the digital side versus the written publication side, you know. Yes. So we're gonna make this stuff more readily available on the digital front, video consumption, audio consumption. So I'm gonna kind of pause here. Yep, go ahead, Chief. Go ahead.
One more thing, but some guy just emailed me. Is this book in hardcover, softcover? I said hardcover, and he said I like hardcover better. And some guys do.
Yeah,
but it's more expensive. You know, but I agree with you. The digital world is taking off. First of all, they're more economical. This guy Joe Keeney puts my books now. We're going to put the BattleSpace books on digital format, so they're more accessible to more guys. They're cheaper, you know, and it's the future. All these books got to eventually be digitized, you know, put into digital form. So I'm doing it, and I agree with you. That's the future.
Yeah. So, and I apologize, Chief. I know you're drinking Pellegrino. I got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old at home, and I coached a baseball game tonight. So I'm having a beer, relaxing here while we're talking. So I apologize in advance. So I'm gonna pause here for a second. I just want to talk to the audience a little bit. We're gonna let them know what we're gonna do here now. The audio recording of this is going to be the first episode of the Firefighters BattleSpace podcast. So I'm kind of just separating this now. I'm going to do an outro right now, Chief. I'm going to thank you, you know, for your time and whatnot. And that's going to go into the audio version that we're going to record, and it'll sound really good when it all kind of meshes together. And then everyone that's on this call right now is going to stick around. We're going to do a Q&A session. That part is exclusive to the people that signed up for this and that joined us tonight. That's not going to be something that we're going to put out there publicly for everyone to listen to, because that's part of this whole thing. So I do appreciate everybody joining us, giving us their attention and time. I'm going to do a little brief outro, like I mentioned, and then we'll get into the Q&A. I do ask if there's anybody that is joining us via audio only via their phone, if you could after we're done going through this, if you could unmute yourself and just give us a heads up that you're on your phone, audio only. I'm not talking about smartphones interacting with us via video phone or on your computer. Just give us that heads up. We'll give you the opportunity first to speak. And then everyone that's not using their audio only feature, if you're on your smartphone, if you're on your laptop, all we ask is that you use the raise hand function. And if you have any issues finding that, it should be under the reactions button. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, click on the reactions button, there should be an option there for you to raise your hand. If you're on your phone, it might be a little bit different, but there should be an option for you to raise your hand to become interactive with this Zoom session. We can then go through this Q&A session one by one and let you guys have a turn to speak. So I'm going to jump back into this now, Chief. I'll thank you for joining us. I'll go through that whole outro thing, and then we'll get into our personal thing. So, Chief Dunn, thanks again. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think we could thank you enough. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, you're part of the Mount Rushmore to the fire service, and what you've done for everybody. I think I could say this for everybody in this room. In terms of their education, their career advancement, where they are right now, what they're able to give to the younger generation of firefighters. It comes from the family tree of the fire service, and you're part of the roots of the family tree of the fire service. So we thank you again for what you've done for us, for sharing part of your intimacy of your life. And the stories that you shared in your book, which you can find on vincentdunn.com. My War Years, Fire Chief's Memoir. It's got a lot of great stories in there, a lot of storytelling. Don't forget, you could also visit vincentdunn.com to get any of the other books written by you, Chief Dunn. And thank you for joining us tonight and getting on here and telling us a little bit about your book.
Well, like I said, we're all standing on the giants. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants. That's why we can see so far. I was standing on giant shoulders, the firefighters and company officers that I worked with over those 40 years. Thank you.
All right, Chief. Thank you again.